Hey everyone, coming to you again this week. This time fresh off of another Bills victory, 30-27 over the Miami Dolphins. Bills take a commanding lead in the AFC East. They really don't extend it because the Jets won, so the Jets move into second place. The Bills have a firm 4-game lead, now 4.5 over Miami and 5 over New England. So the Bills are something like 98% to make the playoffs right now. I'm not sure what that is to win the division necessarily, but they are sitting pretty the rest of the way. It didn't come without some bad news, of course. They're still dealing with some injuries, namely to wide receivers, Amari Cooper, Keon Coleman. We're going to get into all of that. But let's talk about the Miami game first, because I think that's the kind of matchup that we were anticipating, maybe in the first matchup, in the Week 2 Thursday Night Football matchup against Miami, this back-and-forth battle. Because after the teams, they pretty much traded the entire way. They traded punts on their first possessions, and then it was all scoring drives from there on out. They each had one turnover that ended up making a difference, and the Bills just happened to get the ball last. I know that Miami technically got the ball back with 5 seconds to go, but the Bills got the ball back in a tie game. They were able to move the ball down the field, not necessarily in the most pretty fashion or the easiest fashion. They took a sack on first down. They throw an incompletion. They get an offsides penalty. They get an unnecessary roughness penalty, courtesy of Jordan Poyer. Thank you very much. And that was definitely a penalty, by the way. They can argue all they want, but I mean, crown of the helmet right under the chin. It's a type of play that wouldn't have been a penalty maybe 10 years ago, but it's the type of thing that the league is just trying to get out of the game. They're going to flag you for doing it because they don't want you to do it, because they're getting sued for head injuries left and right, or they were, a few years back. So they need to prove that they're doing everything they can to avoid this type of thing happening in the game. Anyway, clear as day penalty, I thought, on Jordan Poyer. That allows them to set up, I believe they got one more first down after that. A couple plays to Mac Hollins, and they set up the 61-yard field goal. What a moment for T-Bass. I mean, you even saw it in the emotion on his face, in his voice after the game when he got the game ball in the locker room. He was basically like, hey, to be able to do this for you guys, and he's like holding back tears. And I think some guys in the locker room were as well. He obviously was going through something, whether that's something personal off the field or just some type of mental block or struggle that he's been dealing with just from his on-the-field performance, stemming maybe from the miss against Kansas City in the playoff game last year. He was battling something. He missed an extra point in this game against Miami. So for him that's redemption right there. Hopefully that instills some confidence in him. Obviously, the Bills continue to show confidence in him. They released the kicker that was on the practice squad. They sent him out there in the first place to kick the 61-yard field goal. And really, I do think that's the right move because it's going to take 5 seconds off the clock. And there were 10 seconds left in the game. So worst case scenario, there's 5 seconds left. You could end up in a situation like Houston all over type of situation where the Bills give up this really quick play, a quick throw, guy kneels down, timeout, 1 second left or something like that. And then the Dolphins get their 61-yard field goal or something the other way. 60-ish yard field goal going the other way. And Jason Sanders can make those as well. But I'm glad what they did. Send T-Bass out there. Let's see what he's got. I mean, and he made it by 5 or 6 yards, if not more. He cleared the crossbar. And like I said, what a moment it was. Chills, honestly. The stadium was rocking. Absolutely electric mood in the stadium after he made that. Because like I said before, that game was really back and forth. They traded turnovers, they traded punts, and then from there they traded scores on 6 or 7 possessions, or however many it ended up being. Tua, fantastic. I thought he was fantastic, honestly. He only got sacked once, but he was 25 of 28. And the sack was like a fumbled snap that Rousseau just beat his man to the inside, and they couldn't recover in time. I should really apologize because last week in the preview leading up to the game, I was talking about how they're big play hunters. They can't help themselves. They're just hunting chunk plays constantly, and that's not how they played. They played kind of dink and dunk, kind of West Coast offense. Like, we're going to take this here, we're just going to hit easy throws. And and that's what they did, nonstop. Like I said, 25 of 28, only 231 yards. That's not, I wouldn't say that's overly an impressive number by today's NFL standards, but 25 of 28 is very impressive, and a pair of touchdowns to go with it. Devon Achane is annoying, and I anticipate he will continue to be annoying in the matchups to come. He was annoying in week 2. He had a really good game in week 2, 29 touches, over 100 yards, I think. He scored a touchdown for Miami, but the game was just never really close because Tua just kept making mistakes, and the Dolphins kept making mistakes overall. But he didn't. Achane didn't. And he was good again in this game. 12 for 63 rushing, 8 for 58 receiving, a pair of touchdowns. I talked about how the Dolphins really need to go to him more, I think, because they put Mostert in the game. And Mostert, to his credit, Mostert, I think, only had like 14 or 15 snaps. And when he was in the game, he was getting the ball because he had 12 touches on only like 14 or 15 snaps, something like that. So if they put him in there, he was getting it more often than not. And he had 10 carries for 56 yards, 2 catches for 32 yards. So he was effective, but he had a really big fumble for them coming out of halftime. That sort of, it flipped the possession chart. Obviously, it flipped possession, but it sort of flipped how the script of the game was going to go from there. The Bills had the ball early in the third quarter instead of the Dolphins, and the Bills ended up with the ball late in the fourth quarter. On that last drive by the Dolphins, I'm kind of thinking, like, I wonder what they're thinking. Miami, what Mike McDaniel's thinking. Like, are they thinking about scoring too fast? I know that they need to score. They obviously have to get in the end zone. But are they thinking about scoring too quickly? Are they thinking about going for 2? That was obviously, a big question that was talked about during the game, I think after the game as well. Should they have gone for 2? And you have to think about how much time are you leaving Allen? Do you really want to kick the extra point and leave it up to a coin toss? Or do you want to go for 2 and then force Josh Allen with, however much time was left? Let me look that up really quick because I think I have that right here. It looked like 1:38. Yeah, the Bills got the ball with 1:38 to go. So do you want to go for 2 and then force Josh Allen into a gotta-have-it situation? And he kind of was there anyway, I guess. He didn't have to have it. The Bills could have went to overtime with Miami. So it wasn't like a field goal or die situation for the Bills. But, and I guess you're going to get that type of Josh Allen anyway. I'm still going through it now because I don't really know the right decision. I don't know what would have increased their win probability the most. Probably going for 2. But then you're putting Josh Allen, like I said, in a gotta-have-it situation with 1.5 minutes to go. Do you think you're going to get that stop there? They almost did anyway, but they kicked the extra point too. Do you have better odds? If you're up 28-27, let's just say you're up 28-27, you go for 2, you get it. Do you have better odds at stopping him in that situation, or do you have better odds going to overtime and leaving it up to the flip of a coin? That's why head coaches get paid what they do. Having said that, I think Sean McDermott has a pretty sizable advantage over Mike McDaniel. I'm not saying he's going to beat him every time. I'm really not, but I think he's just on to him. And it wasn't so much in this game. It was obviously prevalent in week 2. But to me, the Dolphins are kind of a lot of a smoke and mirrors type of thing. It's a lot of cute little designs and stuff. And sometimes it works. It worked for them pretty well on Sunday. They completed a ton of passes. They made it difficult for the Bills. They forced the Bills to tackle. And I say this all the time. It's amazing how good defenses look when they just don't miss tackles. And the Dolphins can make you miss tackles. They have the players to do it. Having said that, is there a bigger waste of resources? Non-quarterbacks, speaking, of course. Forget quarterbacks. Is there a bigger waste of resources in the NFL than Jalen Waddle? Some, maybe as much. And I say that knowing that he scored the game-tying touchdown. But, I don't think he caught a pass until the fourth quarter. I just don't understand what the deal is with him. I actually have his player chart up here really quick. Let me see. What has he got this year? 310 yards, 28 for 310 and 1. That was his first touchdown. So that's in 8 games. So he's averaging 6. Oh, no, sorry. I was trying to do yards reception. Let's do receptions first. He's averaging 3 or 4 catches a game for 35 or 40 yards a game. Seems weird. What are they? What's going on there? Just a misallocation of resources. Anyway, I don't know. I just wanted to fit that in here. Like I said, the Bills improved to 7-2. They have a chance to go 8-2 this week. Would be their best start since the Super Bowl years. And this is supposed to be the regression year. That's what everybody said. You're going to take a step back. You traded Diggs. You lost all these guys in the defense. What if those guys were, there's always the addition by subtraction thing, but like, I don't mean it in terms of like personality. I don't think it's easy to replace leaders like Micah Hyde, like Jordan Poyer, like Stephon Diggs, like locker room voices. Okay, but if the skills are diminishing, and I really don't think that's necessarily the case in terms of Diggs, I'm not going to say he was the same player that they got in 2020, but I think he was still a very capable receiver, a wide receiver 1 in the league. But it seemed to be becoming apparent with guys like Poyer, with guys like Trey White, with Micah Hyde, with Mitch Morse. And they've turned a new leaf there. And they're still very good. Probably because they have Josh Allen, who continues to demonstrate why he is always in the discussion for top 3 quarterbacks in the NFL. So 7-2, really good positioning in the AFC. The Ravens following Thursday Night Football against the Bengals. I'm recording this on Friday. The Ravens are 7-3. The Texans are 6-3. They have a tough matchup with the Lions on Sunday Night Football. So the Bills have the leg up there, but it's kind of muddy. It's going to be muddy in the 1-4 seeds because the Bills have already lost to Houston and Baltimore. And they have Kansas City on the schedule. So, you know, whether they beat them or not, if they beat them, great, because it's going to pull Kansas City closer to you, despite the fact that Kansas City's schedule looks pretty cake. But they struggle sometimes within the division, with some division games. So just keep winning. Just keep winning and see what happens. You just have to be in love with the position they're in right now. 7-2. I wish they didn't have losses to teams they might be fighting for seeding with. You know, and that could matter when it comes to a divisional home game or not. And selfishly, I want to go to another divisional home game. I think I'd be more concerned right now about who's going to be like the 6 or 7 seed, assuming the Bills are probably going to be maybe the 2 or 3. And that's an early assumption, considering it's only week 10. But the Bengals lost to the Ravens. The Bengals are flirting right around there at 7. Do you really want the Bengals at home in the wild card round? I'm sure if you ask the Bills, they'd be like, yeah, absolutely. We don't care. We don't care who it is. But from a fan's perspective, that's got to make you a little nervous. I think if you're like, you have Denver in the 7 right now, wouldn't you just much rather have Bo Nix coming to you for a playoff game? As good as Denver's defense has been, you would rather have Bo Nix, right, than Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. I mean, did you watch the game last night? I know the Cincinnati struggles on defense. That's very clear, very apparent. But there's some ghosts there. There's some demons that kind of haunt us from just matchups that we've had with them before, especially in the playoffs, of course. Let's talk about the Colts. The Colts are this week's opponent. They've obviously, I don't want to say moved on permanently from their first-round pick, Anthony Richardson, but they have moved on from him for now and gone to Joe Flacco. I don't know if that's necessarily, I think it could be a coach's / player's decision. They'll always say it's a coach's decision, but I really wonder if there might have been, I don't want to say a mutiny because that makes it seem like everybody hates Anthony Richardson, and I don't think that's necessarily the case, but if some leaders in the locker room walked into Shane Steichen's office and were like, hey, coach, you know, it's getting hard for us. Like, we're putting this kid in a position every week to go out there and win the game. It's getting really difficult for us. We need a veteran voice. And then I think, you know, that everyone likes to do the tap out, to bring up the tap out thing where he left the game for a play because he was too tired and then admitted that he was too tired after the game. That just might be a thing where it's like, dude, we need to sit you down. Like, do you understand how the NFL works? You're the quarterback. You don't get to do that. I know that running backs and receivers run off and tight ends run off on and off the field on a play-by-play basis, but you're the quarterback. I understand that you might be having trouble breathing. If they call it a pass play, just audible to a run, say you saw something. Do anything but come out of the game and then subsequently admit that you came out of the game because you were exhausted. It sounds funny at the time, but it's the NFL, man. I don't think like the guys in the locker room think it's funny. Fans probably don't think it's funny. It's funny from third-party perspective. But if you're in it, I don't think it's that funny. Anyway, the Colts are coming off of a loss to the Minnesota Vikings. 2 losses, in fact, to the Texans and the Vikings. Flacco has started 3 games. I guess I got back on this because the Texans game was the last one for Anthony Richardson. The Vikings game was the first one for Joe Flacco since the benching, of course. But Flacco started a couple games early in the year. He came in relief against Pittsburgh, a game that they ended up winning 27-24. And then they lost the next week to Jacksonville, 37-34, a real tight one. And then just skimmed past Tennessee the following week, 20-17. So Flacco has been responsible or part of like 2 of the... Here's a funny part here. 2 of the highest yardage output by the Colts offense have been Joe Flacco games. The 2 highest. Pittsburgh, 358 yards. Jacksonville, 447 yards. The 2 lowest, Minnesota, 227 yards, and Tennessee, 269 yards, total yards, are also Joe Flacco games. So you really are not sure what you're going to get out of him. He obviously exploded for like 350 plus against Jacksonville, but everybody kind of does that to Jacksonville. Tennessee is, for as poor of a record as they have, they're a pretty good defense. Minnesota, very good defense. Pittsburgh, very good defense. And Flacco has struggled with them. I have his chart up here really quick. Give me a sec. Bear with me. Got it. Just got to move it. All right, so 16 of 27 last week, 179 yards and a pick. Not that impressive. Against Tennessee, 22 of 38 for 189. 2 touchdowns and a pick. 33 of 44 for 359 and 3 touchdowns against Jacksonville. But it's Jacksonville. 16 of 26 for 168 and 2 touchdowns against Pittsburgh. So, 2 games, 189, 3 games, 189 yards or fewer, and then 1 for 359. So which one's the outlier? I'm just going to assume that is the outlier. And that Joe Flacco will settle in more around 200, 220-ish yards against the Bills, especially without Michael Pittman, who hasn't been his favorite target, but has been certainly battling injuries over the past couple weeks. There was an initial report he was going to miss maybe a month with a back injury, and then he played the following week. Like, he's been toughing it out. Tough guy, for sure. But he seems to have a bit more of a rapport with Josh Downs right now. They're having trouble getting Adonai Mitchell involved. Alec Pierce is kind of just a deep play threat for them. The Bills are pretty good against that. So I think it's going to be a Jonathan Taylor game for Indy. And likewise, it might be a James Cook, Ray Davis game for the Bills, especially if they're down Keon Coleman. We know they're going to be down Keon Coleman. They might be down Amari Cooper as well. It appears he's wearing like a soft cast on his wrist. And he admitted to the media it's coming really down to pain management and how he wants to, that's got to be tough. Like, you not only got to catch the ball and it's going to hit your wrist, of course, you have to brace for the impact of the hit and land on the ground sometimes. You can't always just catch and get out of bounds. So I don't know what to expect there. I would not really love the Bills' wide receiver core, obviously, if they went into it with Mac Hollins and Shakir, of course, and Mac Hollins and Curtis Samuel, who, I can't figure that out for the life of me. Okay, I'm not even going to bother speculating on it because I can't figure it out for the life of me. And then Mac Hollins and Jalen Virgil, who was promoted to the 53-man roster Friday afternoon. That becomes your receivers. Maybe they use more of Kincaid and maybe more of Knox. He's been catching passes a little bit more lately. Or maybe they just rely more heavily on the run game. Maybe it'll be a quick game because both teams are going to try to run the football. I thought that last week I thought the Dolphins were going to hunt chunk plays, and they didn't. So I could be wrong about that, of course, as well. It's just a game I think the Bills should win, despite the fact that Indy's 3-1 at home, 1-4 on the road. So they're a bit better at Lucas Oil, no doubt. Most teams are better at home. It's just a game that I think the Bills they're better equipped for, despite the injuries at wide receiver. They have the best player on the field. It's Josh Allen. I trust the defense to force not necessarily mistakes out of Flacco. We know he's prone to them, but to just have a good idea of what's going to get thrown at them, and it might be a lot of Jonathan Taylor, and that matchup might not work well for them. Didn't work well with the Derrick Henry thing, but and the Bills are coming off a defensive performance at least, that was probably their least impressive since Derrick Henry. But that doesn't necessarily have to carry over week to week. I think the Bills are, like I said, in a good position. This is just they're only favored by 4 points. I think that's the road game. You do the 6-point flip because the home team typically just gets a 3-point favorite in Vegas. So you kind of do the 6-point flip. The Bills would be favored by 10, about 10 at home. Having said that, it's come down a little. I don't know. I'm still going to pick the Bills. I'm picking the Bills to win this game. It might be a little less pretty. It might, I know that we're sick of these slow first half starts and stuff like that, but you might get more of that. I just think that over the course of 60 minutes, the Bills will be able to demonstrate that they're the better team. And I'm going to pick them to beat the Colts. Maybe a few more field goals this week. Weird score. 26-17. Bills over Colts. Guys, thank you for coming this far in the video. Much appreciate you if you did. Hit me up on Twitter. My Twitter handle and YouTube username are the same. But enjoy your weekend. And as always, above all else, go Bills.